If you've been watching these videos about the opening in backgammon, in particular Bill Robertie's book, How to Play the Opening in Backgammon, you'll have heard me say several times before that it's such an encyclopedic book. There's just so much information in here. And there's no doubt, I used the word wallowing before. I'm moving at a snail's pace through the book. But the way I see it, there's no point doing this if we're not going to learn something from it. And I just feel that if we gloss over every single position or just skip too much of it, it's a pointless exercise. If we're going to do this, we might as well do it right and get the benefit of what Bill Robertie is saying in the book. But there's an awful lot of stuff in the book. And also, so I'm afraid I've had to break this into more parts. Even chapter 3, I thought I was going to do it in 4 parts. I'm now down to 5 parts. I'm moving at a glacial pace. But at least I'm learning from it, I hope. But the other thing that I'm kind of struggling a little bit with the book is that Bill Robertie just gives a position after position after position. And I'm a very rules-based person. I like to kind of know, well, why are we doing this in each position and what can we take from this position? So what I've tried to do for this part C, which looks at, he compares the 5-point versus other improvements you can make around the board. What I've tried to do is to come up with my own rules from the positions he's given. And I just want to add a caution at the start of this. As I've said many times, I am not a backgammon expert. I'm a student who's trying to learn the game. And I'm making these videos as a way of making notes. You're bored of me saying that now at this stage. But these are sort of the rules I'm making for myself based on what Bill Robertie has in this chapter. But I just need to put a disclaimer here that these are rules that I seem to have extrapolated. I could be wrong, but it certainly makes sense to me having kind of read through the book. So, looking at the 5-point versus other improvements and going through various rules, the first rule I'm coming up with is that, I hope you're happy with mathematical notation, is the 5 points is the best point, but the 4-point is also a very good point. So if you can make your 4-point and another good point as well, that outranks just making the 5-point. So here's an example here, which he gives here. We've rolled double 4s. Well, obviously we're going to hit with 13 to 9 and play another checker down to cover it. And we could make our 5-point like that. Nice position. But let's just go back there a second. As I said, the 4-point is a very good point as well. So if we make the 4-point, playing 8 to 4 with 2 of our checkers, now we have a situation where we've made the 4-point, which is nearly as good as a 5-point, plus another very good point in the 9-point. So that's the position where we just made the 5-point. That's the position where we've made 2 very good points, 2 very good blocking points. And definitely throughout this chapter, where you can make the 4-point and another good point, it outranks the 5-point. And as you can see, it's quite a significant error there to have made the 5-point instead. Now here's another similar position, again with double 4s. And again, we're looking at this, wondering what we should do. Well, we could play 2 down from the 13-point, play 13 to 5 with 2, and make our 5-point nice and safely. We're not hitting anything here. But just remember that rule, that the 4-point plus another good point will outrank the 5-point. So if you look at it here, we can play 8 to 4 with 2 of our checkers and make a really good point. We can then make another point. We could play 2 down from the 13-point to make our 9-point. But in fact, in this situation, Bill Robertie says, with black having 2 blots down the bottom, contact is more likely, so we're better off having a home board point made instead. So having made the 4-point, the actual correct move is to make the 2-point as well. So we make our 4-point, and then we play 6-2 with 2 of our checkers, with 2 of our rolls, and we make the 2-point as well. And you look, making the 5-point here is actually only the 3rd best option, because making the 4-point and making another good point will outrank the 5-point. And that's the first rule. The second rule finds in favour of the 5-point. The second rule says that basically, if we can make the 5-point, it's better, that's my mathematical little, it's greater than, it's better than little tidy up plays at the back. So I've broken this into 2 little divisions based on the positions he's given. The 5-point is better than making a good point and escaping a lone back checker. And I'll show you what we mean by this. So we've rolled double fours here. Just bear in mind, on our midpoint up in the top left there are 6 checkers there on our midpoint. We've played 6 to 5 with our first roll. Black has responded with a 4-2. And now we roll double fours. Well, obviously, we can roll 2 down from the midpoint. So 2 that we can unstack the 6 heavy checkers on the midpoint and bring 2 down to the 9 point. Now, up the top there, we've made a good point. We could say, well, look, should we escape the back checker? We could play 4 and 4, take our back checker forward from 24 to 16. If we're not hitting the next go, we've probably got freedom. Freedom is a great thing to have achieved. Is that the best thing to do? Well, let's just look at the other option. Put that back there. The other option is to play the other 2 rolls from our 9 point into our 5 point. And Bill Robertie says that is preferable. XG says that is preferable because the 5 point is such a key point. In the last video, I talked about the raw inherent power of the 5 point. It's a brilliant chance to make our 5 point, and we'll escape our back checker in time as well. So for that reason, making the 5 point is significantly better. So that's the first rule: is making the 5 point is better than making a good point and escaping a lone back checker. The other part of the rule is this: making the 5 point is better than running one of our back checkers to the safety of the midpoint. And so here's a position which will illustrate this very well. We have rolled a 6 and a 3, and if you look up in the top right quadrant, we have a checker on the 22 point, and we can bring this to safety. So to do so, we play it forward 6 and on 3. It's safe. It's black has those big stacks up there on the top, dying to hit us. We've avoided black having the chance of hitting us. Surely that's a good thing. But let's just put it back there and see the other option. The other option is down the bottom. We could play 11 to 5 and 8 to 5 and make our 5 point. And just making the 5 point is better than tidy up plays up in our home board. Sorry, in our defensive board. Tidying up at the back is not as good as making our 5 point generally. And I wasn't sure, was this just, Bill Robertie gives a few positions. I thought, well, maybe he's just picked positions that kind of suit this case. So I tried to change the position around. So this is the position I came up here, where now we've rolled a 6 and a 3. Look at the prime that black's got going up the top there. Surely to God, we should run 6 to 3, escape one of those back checkers, and run it to safety. But no, even here, making the 5 point is better. The only way I could set up a position where making the 5 point wasn't as good as escaping the back checker is where we had only the one. In this position here, the slight change here is that we don't have a checker on our 24 point. It's already escaped. We only have one checker back now. And freedom, as I said, is very desirable. If we can get past black's attack here. And 6-3 allows us to do this. This is the only situation I could put into XG that would allow me make it that the running play is the best play. In general, the rule is tidy up plays at the back are not as good as making the 5 point. And even here, if you look here, we can play 11 to 5 and 6 to 5 and make our 5 point. We can make our 5 point with the 6 and the 1 here. Or we could play that checker on our 15 point down to the 9 point to safety and then just split 11 to 10 or something like that. So, we could, again, play a much safer play, surely, playing 15 to 9. But the correct move is make the 5 point. It's definitely worth it. The 5 point outranks tidy up plays. The third rule is a very simple one. It's just an example of a position that applies. You've probably, at this stage in the game, know the rule that if you're trying to block your opponent in, if your opponent's ahead in the race and you're trying to block their anchor, if you can make a point 6 away from their anchor, it makes it harder for them to lose. So if the opponent has a 3 point anchor and we can make our 9 point, that's more effective than making the 5 point. And here's an example of it here. We've double fours to play again. Well, 1-4 has to come in from the bar. 1-4 is going to come down 13 to 9. Now we have a choice. We have 2 more 4s to play. And we could play the 2 checkers in our 9 point safely in and make our 5 point like that. And we've talked about the power of the 5 point. Well, we have the 5 point here. Surely that's good. But we are behind in the race. So we'll just put them back there. our checkers on the 9 point are blocking black's anchor on the 3 point, makes it much, much harder for them to escape. So while the 5 point is great, sometimes the blocking point is more important. And all we do with the other two is just run our back checker forward. Um, Little things like it duplicates twos, that roll, and things like that. But that's not the important thing. The important thing here is that our point and our 9 point is causing big problems for black trying to escape the checkers on their 3 point, and that's why we do it. The next rule is that if we can make a good point and a safe hit, that's better than making the 5 point. And I underlined the word safe here. And I said Bill Robertie didn't come up with any of these rules. These are just me coming up with rules as I've been going through, what he's done here. But if we can make a good point and a safe hit, that's a better thing to do than making our 5 point. And let me show you what I mean. I think this is obvious. If you wanted to pause and then unpause, and I said to you, what would you do with 3-1 here? You could make the 5 point, 8-5 and 6-5. But the much more attractive option here is to hit black's blot down the bottom left quadrant there, 13-10, and then just trundle on 10-9, make the point. So we're making a good point, which is the 9 point, and we're making a safe hit, and therefore that's the right thing to do. I see a blunder not to do that. But what about this? We could play 13-9 here. I haven't kind of gone through the workings of this position because the presentation would be too long here, but we could play 13-9, make our 9 point a good point. We could hit 6-3. Is that not a good thing? But remember when I showed you the rule, I said it's about making a safe hit. It's not about hitting loose. If we played 13-9, we'd be hitting loose with 6-3. And that's not as good as making our 5 point. So in this position here, rather than hitting loose with 6-3, we're better off just playing 9-5 and 8-5, making our 5 point, having the 5 point there in our armory, and the loose hit is not the right move. But if we took this position, Bill Robertie just notes this, we might, think about why do you hit loose. This is more of a lesson in hitting loose rather than the 5 point. You hit loose sometimes as a tempo hit. Okay, so you might say that you might play the 6-3 if we needed to buy ourselves a bit of time. So if you look up the top middle there, we have made an anchor on our opponent's bar point, our 18 point. If I move those checkers back a little, and now look at black's attacking formation up the top there, they've great chances in the next roll of making a good blocking point. With 3 checkers back, we don't want black making further blocking points. So we need to buy ourselves a bit of time with a tempo hit. And this situation, the tempo hit is right. So we're going to play 13-9 and then hit 6-3. And as you can see, it's right there. But in general, the rule is you're looking for a safe hit and another good point. And here's a final example of it. You could make the 5 point here. We've been banging on, this whole chapter bangs on about the importance of the 5 point. Well, you could play 2 down from 13 point and hit on the black's blot in our 5 point and cover it. And yes, you've made the 5 point, aren't you? Great. But there's a lot of blots lying. It's a very messy position. We're very, very likely to be hit back there. If you look at black, so many things black could roll at any 3 or something plus a 5 or something plus a 6 or something plus a 1. There's so many different rolls black can roll next go to hit us. That's just a very risky move. And we can make a safe hit instead. So we can play, first of all, if we look at that, we can play 7-3 and just tidy up that blot. We can then do a safe hit with 6-2 and then tidy that up with another roll. And with our final 4, we can just make our anchor up the top there. Yes, we haven't got our 5 point, but we've made our opponent's 5 point, and it's just it's a much safer play. And if you look at it, playing 13-5 with 2 checkers isn't even in the top 5 moves there when I put it through XG. And the final rule of this video is just the 5 point is generally going to be better than what Bill Robertie calls the swing around play and the swing around move. And I'm going to show you what that swing around move means in now. So in this position here, we've rolled a 6 and a 3, and we can make our 5 point. We can play 11-5 and 8-5, and 5 point, very satisfactory there. And that's going to be the right thing to do. But we could, go back to the start there, what Bill Robertie means by swing around play is when you take one of our back checkers and you go swing it around the board, past our midpoint, past the opponent's midpoint, and into our outer board. So if you look on the top right quadrant there, that we have a blot on our 20 point, we can play it forward 6 and then on 3 and make a good point on our 11 point. And Mitchie's first proverb is make an outfield point. We could make that 11 point. It's a good long-term asset for us. But compare the position. That's one position. That's the position with the 5 point made. The 5 point is just a stronger position, and we're not under any sort of pressure at the back, and for that reason, making the 5 point is better. So the 5 point, the rule I've kind of taken from this chapter is that the 5 point is better than the swing around play, generally. So that was the position Bill Robertie gave, but he tweaks it slightly, and he moves black a little bit more, imposing up the top. Now if we make the 5 point, he's moved black's anchor forward. The 5 point is less good as a block, and in this situation, there's not much in it, but the swing around play is slightly better. I actually played with this next year and came up with several positions, further positions. I could have bored the hell out of you with several further positions, and I just thought in the end, you know what? Generally, everything I found was just you're better off making the 5 point. And if we're looking at this at the opening, and my focus is always just how can I improve my opening game. With my opening game, the play is not going to be too far advanced. So I thought this was probably a good example of it, where we rolled a 4-2. We're probably not going to play a 4-2 like that. Our opponent has rolled a 5-4. Probably isn't going to play a 5-4 like that. But I took this as kind of an example to start you with in the early game. The early game, we can now make our 5 point with 11-5 and 8-5, or we can do the swing around play and play 20-11. And here, it's clearly right. In the early game, when it's very unstructured, we're not particularly at risk, making the 5 point always seems to be better than the swing around play. So, that's it for another section of Bill Robertie's Chapter 3. I'm still a bit daunted by the fact that there are 15 chapters in total in his How to Play the Opening in Backgammon. But we're going to keep going because, as I said, there's no point not learning. There's no point just doing it for the sake of it. We're going to keep learning and keep going. The next section is going to look at the one point that I haven't looked at the video so far is comparing the 5 point to the 7 point and which is better. And sometimes it's better to make the 7 point, and sometimes it's better to break the 7 point to make the 5 point, which is quite an interesting play as well. So that'll be coming up in the next video shortly.